But that's because usually for me it has to go do customs.
Customs, yeah, exactly.
Customs sucks! Anyways, hi everyone, welcome to the Semi-Bookish podcast.
Yeah.
We're starting off with me ranting about, getting packages from other countries, but anyways. Tony, we're just gonna start straight off. Tony, what are you reading? Playing, watching?
I am in the last 5 episodes of this anime that I have been loving. It's so good.
Is this the Eureka 7?
Yes, this is Eureka 7, so it's really good.
Is it Eureka?
It's
I'm like, because it's Eureka.
Technically, it's Eureka. Because that's the name of the character.
Okay.
Yeah,
They just have it spelled like Eureka.
Yeah,
like, that's fine.
It is spelled like Eureka, but that is not how it is pronounced because that is not the name of the character. The name of the character is Eureka. I don't know why.
Why? Not you. Anime people, answer me why.
Well, I will say that my favorite thing about this anime in particular is that they don't explain anything.
Right.
Until there's like 2 moments where they explain everything that you should have known by this point thus far. Mm-hmm. So some of it's a surprise because it's like, they've been dropping hints the whole way, and then some of it's not at all a surprise, but it's literally one character cornering another and going, you want to know why this stuff is happening to us? Here. And so it's like, that's the other thing that I love about the show is that everything is presented as some character's something. Like, even like, how anime will frequently do like the random backstory episode that gives you all this,
the filler
stuff.
Episode where I'm like, we could have
No, not the filler episode. The backstory.
I call them filler episodes because I'm just like, you could have put this in like 5 separate little flashbacks amidst the whole entire thing. There's a reason that they don't, and it's because they're following a particular 4-act structure that requires the backstory to go in a certain place. Yeah.
And anime messes with this a lot more. Manga is a little bit more smooth with it because it's a part of the manga form. But anime kind of puts it wherever they feel it works. And oftentimes it does work.
Yes.
The problem is that if you're not used to anime, you're like, why are we suddenly going to this random character's 3-episode backstory? Like, you know what I mean? And then other anime will, like My Hero, for example, will like literally recreate the show for 3 episodes in order to do that. My Villain Academia, just to give...
Like how in Naruto, we get a whole entire 3-episode arc about Neji's backstory about why he hates Hinata.
Yeah.
And it's literally just because his dad died.
Yeah. So it's very much something I'm used to, but the way that Eureka 7 does it is... information is only presented to you, even if it's presented in backstory. Mm-hmm. It's only presented through a certain character. Yes. So if the main character, who by the way doesn't know anything, because he's a 14-year-old boy who gets swept up in all of this stuff, and he's just like, wait, what's happening? Like, that's literally his whole character, the whole show. He's just like, but wait, what? Why are we doing this? What?
That sounds like Van from Final Fantasy XII, because he does the exact same thing the whole entire game.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So... everything is presented through character. So even flashbacks, if a certain character would have known something that's happening in that flashback based upon their relationship with the people in the flashback, I am thinking of a very specific example, but I'm not spoiling. It's presented through that character talking about it, and you get a whole backstory. It's really, really well done. I'm still really nervous about the last 5 episodes because, it could...
A lot can happen in 5 episodes.
Yeah, a lot can happen in 5 episodes. Berserk 97. But I'm hopeful that it will stick the landing, and if it does, it's going to be my number 1 anime for a while. Yeah, I don't know if it's not I wouldn't call it my favorite, because I think My Hero is just going to be my favorite for a very long time. It's because My Hero has all the things that I personally love about a story.
I'm so sad that it's almost done.
But Eureka 7, in terms of craft, is the best anime I have ever seen so far. And yes, that does include Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, which
ooh, that's a strong.
That is.
Oh yeah, no.
If Tony says that about that, but
yeah, Full Metal is still as fantastic as it ever was, but Eureka edges it out. For one thing, it's 14 episodes shorter, so that helps. But what it does by trimming that 14 episodes out of, the whole arc is quite significant. It's the craft of that story is really well made. I'm also reading. I've been reading this for a week now, and I am kind of reaching the point where I'm like, okay, I want to be done. I'm enjoying it a lot, but I'm still just kind of like, okay, I've been reading this book for a week. It's called Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, which I've talked to Grant and Aaron and literally anyone who's walked past me in the last week. I've been shouting at them about it.
You have to spread the good word.
I do, and it's a book that was published in 1954 by a writer named Chinzi Ormond. Chinzi spelled Czenzi. Ormond, you can figure out how to spell it yourself. Ormond with an E at the end. It's really, really good. I never knew that Solomon the King could actually be interesting, but it goes to show if you have a historical novelist who has done their research and knows how to write well, it can really sort of overturn those things in your head. So I really, really like it. It's really good. I wish that I liked her. By her, I mean the Queen of Sheba. I wish I liked her more because I don't. I don't dislike her, but her side of the story still feels a bit flat. But I'm only like 85 pages into a 290-something page book. So I'm sure it's going to turn around, but at this point she just hasn't had as much page time as Solomon, and what page time she has had has all been confrontational, so it's very one note. It's like, okay, this person is where Solomon has had, I mean, my goodness, he starts the book off, he is this incredibly well-written, like, I want to know that guy. Like, I still would tell my friends, don't sleep with that guy. Because even the way he thinks about women is exactly how I would presume a man at the apex of his power to think about women. I mean, it's not a bad way, if that makes sense. And it certainly isn't maybe it's modern, but it's not too modern, for a guy to think of all the different qualities that his different wives has, that none of them seem to be put into one woman. Like, it's an interesting thought exercise, and it's fascinating that a woman actually wrote that into his mind.
I have a solution. Frankenstein woman.
Sure. That might not be the best way to go after you finish building a temple to,
True.
But it's, sure, it's whatever.
Hey.
Yeah, Anyway, that's what I've been reading. And as far as what I've been watching, I have actually, other than the anime, I've also been watching a bunch of biblical epics because I'm writing a Queen of Sheba novel, so,
So, of course.
I just want to see how other people are handling the same time period and subject matter and all this kind of stuff. And, it's interesting. I'll say that much, So, anyway. Grant, what are you reading?
Hey.
Probably same stuff as last time.
Watching or playing.
Well, all right. I'll get through the movies first because I've seen quite a few.
Ooh, nice.
So
at the same time.
No. I'll kind of do a lightning round thing. So I saw Childhood of a Leader, which came out in 2015. I think the biggest person in there, I mean, he's big now, but Robert Pattinson, he was. So this was post Twilight.
Sure.
He doesn't have a huge role or anything. It's based on a short story by Sartre. And I really like the guy who did the score, Scott Walker. So I had high hopes going into this movie.
Yeah.
Wasn't that great?
I could hear the button there. So he's just like, I have high expectations. I was like, but say it.
Yeah, it does some really cool stuff stylistically. Like the beginning and end are very cool. I think they do some interesting stuff. It just kind of fell flat for me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I feel like it tried to be... it tried to be opaque and subtle and stuff. I feel like if they got a different director, even somebody like Jonathan Glazer, who did The Zone of Interest, I feel like he could do something, a much better job with something like this.
Okay.
It's not bad. I'd give it like 3 stars. It's worth a watch. It's interesting.
Sure.
but I saw the new Planet of the Apes in theaters.
How was that? I've been hearing good things.
It is good. It's not as good as the Matt Reeves directed ones.
Interesting. Okay.
It very much feels like it flows from those very naturally.
Sure. Yeah.
I will say, and it feels a lot like the first few original Planet of the Apes.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Because this takes place generations after the Matt Reeves ones, so humans have been relegated to like a kind of a scavenger, group or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's definitely a few overt callbacks to the original
Nice.
ones.
Okay.
No, it's a good action adventure
Yeah.
movie. I don't know if Andy Serkis still does the motion capture for like the main character. It's a different main character, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But either way,
Because he's gotten away from that a lot in his last few roles.
yeah, he's directing a movie.
Is
now
he?
As well, I couldn't tell you what it is.
That's exciting.
Yeah, so I'd say that's worth a watch. I'm a huge Planet of the Apes fan, so I'll give anything in the
Yeah, I should
series a
give
watch.
those a try.
I also saw Furiosa.
I was gonna ask, and
For those who don't know, it's a Mad Max movie.
yeah,
But blah, blah, blah.
yeah. Where have you been? Sorry.
Where have you?
Not watching movies. That's where I've
Oh, okay.
See,
you
that's-
need
that's
to
your problem.
you need to watch Mad Max Fury Road. Every
It's great.
person on the planet should watch Mad. Like it's so good.
No,
been.
it's
Is it streaming somewhere?
I'm
I think it's on Max.
I can bring you the Blu-ray.
Okay.
Also,
If
we
you wanted
have
to.
it. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, we do?
We should. Yes, it's Mad Max Fury Road.
I like how I was just about to go, yeah, I can't watch that. And I'm like, yeah, I can. I have a PlayStation now.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yes. Yes. You should. Yes.
I have to remind myself I
So-
can have that capability now.
Furiosa. How was that for you?
It's quite good.
Yes. Okay. Good. That's what I want.
So is it as good as Fury Road? No. However, I pretty much expected that going into it.
Right.
Because Fury Road is, in my opinion, it's kind of as close as you can get to like a perfect action
Yeah,
film.
it's flawless. Yeah.
Its world building is really great, and that's something that I will say that it brings over from Fury Road. Like
Yeah.
it expands the Mad Max universe a little bit, like not too crazy. It is a prequel to Fury Road, so you get a lot of the same characters and stuff.
Yeah.
With some different actors, but anyways, yeah, it's not quite to the level of Fury Road.
Yeah.
It has a much more epic, sprawling feel. It's split into different sections.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
And it makes sense because you're following one character over many years and stuff.
How was Hemsworth?
Hemsworth, he was really good. I was surprised
Oh,
because I'm
good.
not the hugest Chris Hemsworth fan, but I think he went. They let him go like full Australian. So I've been waiting for that.
interesting. I feel like the thing that I want to see from him, I just haven't seen yet.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like it's like, okay, yeah, we've seen him do what we expect someone who is an actor who's pretty to do. Like, okay, that's fine, but there's more in there. I feel like there's more in there. He just doesn't choose roles that give him that kind of.
I feel like this is a breath of fresh air.
Oh, good.
As far as like his performances goes, he's definitely not. There's no half measures or anything.
Good.
He's an entertaining character all around. I won't spoil it, but
Good. Yeah, because we live in a world in which it is a crime that. Oh God, what is the Gladiator man's name?
Russell Crowe.
Yeah, that Russell Crowe got this whole run of movies until we got sick of him and cast him into the outer darkness, as well we should have. But Chris Hemsworth has not been given that. I mean, yes, okay, Chris Hemsworth was Thor, okay, like, fine, whatever. He's living in a better version of this world. But still, he should not be limited to Thor, is what I'm saying. There should be more for him, because I feel like there is more.
and he's recently taken accountability for the quality drop on some of the later Thor movies.
Yeah, I think that was a mistake of his. I think he should lay that all at Taika Waititi's feet.
I
Because
think it's probably a mixed
it could be.
thing.
That's
But-
fair.
I think it's a mix of both of them.
Yeah, Taika's definitely.
They fed into each other, and then it just,
Although I am a Love and Thunder apologist, I will fight all day long about how well made that movie is. I think it's so good, and the rest of the MCU movies around it have no right to be there, with the exception of Ant-Man 3 and Guardians 3.
Like talking about the newer ones.
Yeah, the newer ones. Yeah, the newer ones are all. I mean, they all have problems, and
including No
Love
Way
and
Home.
I've seen like 2 since.
See, No Way Home is too far distant from
Okay, good.
Love and Thunder.
I was gonna start like throwing things
Yeah,
at you, like
no. No Way Home
Spider-Man
is...
in there. I was gonna start
No,
throwing my Kindle at.
No Way Home is fantastic, but it feels like it's in the wrong place. Like I think it's in the wrong phase, and it's too late in the whole. It resolves so many problems, and yet it's trying to set up others, like the whole multiverse thing, which is like, what? So it in and of itself is really, really good for what it's doing. I don't like how it has to sit with all of these other sort of bizarre setup for the multiverse movies where it's like, why are we watching these? And of course Black Panther 2 is wonderful. But I mean, okay, so there's some good ones in there, but Love and Thunder is among them, and I think it's among the best, actually. It does a lot really well that it shouldn't be able to do, I think. And one of the things I think it does really well is cast. Like, the cast is able to have a synergy that you would need in order to sell something that kind of bonkers. So, anyway, that's neither here nor there. Did you have any other things that I was interrupting with my...
No, I mean, I had one more movie I was going to go over, but I think it's about time to get into our main subject.
I suppose, but we don't know what Aaron's reading yet.
I was like, oh, are you gonna just I was actually just gonna let you guys just keep going until you guys realize it. I was just gonna be like, okay.
But you have the talking pillow.
That would have been really fun.
I have the what?
You have the talking pillow now.
Anyways.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
So, book-wise, let me just get that out of the way because that's simple. I'm reading The United States of Cryptids, which is nonfiction. Nonfiction. You get the idea. It is by J.W. Ocker, and it's basically like a whole entire like overview / like stories of all the different cryptids in the United States.
That's really cool.
So it's got like Jersey Devils in here. It's got the Wampus Cat, Mothman.
So is it just the stories themselves, or is it also sort of an anthropological study of where the stories come from?
So, for example, right now, so this is like the Beast of Busco, and it's got like the type of it, it's got like when the earliest sighting was, how big it is, the location it's at, all the different kind of stuff about it. And so
that's cool. I love
do they have the Michigan Dogman in there?
Hold on. Okay. Why is it doing this? Sorry, my Kindle's being weird right now. I'm gonna assume that Dogman is in here. Yep, Dogman is in here.
Okay, cool.
1938 was the earliest sighting of Dogman. You're welcome.
There's okay, so
interesting.
And it's 7 to 8 feet tall. So do with that what you will.
Not to interrupt you for too long, Aaron. There's a video on YouTube with probably just over 100 views. It's probably some Michigan radio personality or something. But he recorded a hip hop a song about the history of the Michigan Dogman, and it must be listened to be believed. So if you can find it, I don't remember what it's called, but
okay.
Wow,
it's glorious.
That's a lot of information to process.
I mean, it's awful, but it's good.
Okay.
I also have, what is it? Sorry, I'm scrolling through my whole entire long thing because Amazon had a whole entire sale. After I finish that, I'm going to start on The Crucible of Time by John Brunner.
Oh,
because
really?
It was on sale and I bought it, and so now I have to read it because now it's in my Kindle.
Sure.
I'm still going through my lovely Tyler Hoechlin marathon of watching anything that he's in. So we're still going through Teen Wolf.
Nice.
But that's because Tyler Hoechlin exists.
Yeah.
And then game-wise, I'm playing... I was going to start to say, Sims 4, because I am still playing Sims 4. However, Old World literally, took over my life this weekend. So, for those who haven't heard me rant about this game before, Old World is, a mix between Civilization and Crusader Kings.
Mm-hmm.
So, where for Civilization, you have to reach, a certain number of points or a certain, era for you to win the game.
Right.
Old World works in that same hat where you have to reach a certain point. You can have different types of wins. You can either have a point win, so the more legacy points you have, there's a limit of 52 or 51 or something, and once you reach that limit,
Yeah.
Whoever has the most points at the end wins. You could have a turn limit where it's 200 turns, or you could have an ambition limit where you have to reach 10 different ambitions that you've completed before you can win. But it's got that Crusader Kings element where you've got like little things that are, because you're not set with a specific ruler. You can make your own ruler. Case in point is what I'll explain.
Oh, that's fun.
But you can make your own ruler for the different countries civilizations that I will name later. And you can have bonus cards of like somebody's having an affair and you catch them having the affair. What are you going to do as a ruler? And you have different options and different outcomes.
Wow. Don't ask Agamemnon that
somebody is now plotting against you. What are you going to do about it? Like, your son is exploring and he comes across this madman who has ramblings. Are you going to order your son back? Are you going to let him invite the madman back as a court member? Or are we going to ignore his ramblings and get, like, other things out of it? Like, it's, like, a whole entire thing. So the civilizations, and I did just get a DLC that added another civilization in there, which I was really surprised by, but I was quite pleased.
Sure.
So you have, like, Haiti, Babylonia, Egypt, Rome, Greece, Carthage, Kush.
Of course.
And I think there's like a couple others that are also involved. Oh, Persia is also in there. And I think there's another one, but I can't remember what it is off the top of my head at the moment.
Yeah.
But you can, so when you pick your character from the game, you can pick as those like main like civilization people. So for Carthage you get Dido. For Rome you get Remus and Romulus.
Oh sure, probably yeah.
I think it's Romulus that you get, and Remus is there as like your sibling or whatever, and it's like a whole entire thing. But you like, and I think for Egypt it's Hatshepsut.
Oh, Hatshepsut. Ooh, they give you Hatshepsut for Egypt.
Yes.
That's nice.
And so, like, you get a specific ruler if you pick that, but you also have the option of the pick later thing where you can create basically your own ruler from scratch. And it will get rid of, like, all of the other, like, automatic rulers, and it will just populate with their own.
Oh.
So it's really nice so you're not, like, confined to just those rulers or just this stuff happening. There's a lot of like leeway that you can go with.
Sure.
However, I kept playing, and there's also tribes. That are also in there. You could substitute them for barbarians, or you could have the tribes, and you can actually like turn around and like also tribal alliance with them and use that for stuff. So for example, there's the Danes, the Gauls, the Vandals, the Numidians, the Scythians. There's a couple others that are also in there.
Yeah.
However, I have a vendetta against the Numidians because they kept murdering me during my playthroughs. Like, my character would have their son or their daughter or whoever, the child would turn 2, and then the Numidians would just murder me. And it leads to a whole entire thing where, like, now I have this regent character who I have to control, and I hated every single second of it. Because then it just leads to a whole entire amount of, like, chaos. Because now everyone is trying to vie for my throne. So I was playing as Carthage earlier in the weekend. And now I'm playing as Greece for fun.
Okay.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
I think my husbands have died twice. I did a weird
Wait, each one has died twice?
The first husband actually died twice.
Wow.
Not on purpose.
Did you load the game and then
No.
die again? Or?
No.
Okay.
So the first time he was severely ill, and so there's a thing where he's severely ill, and so this happened in a different save where you could turn around and he wants you to promote one of his like right-hand men, like,
sure.
so that way he can start investigating and figure it out. Well, the first time I did that whole entire card setup, what happened is that the guy that I promoted was in love with my queen, which was Dido, and turned around and murdered my husband so they could be together. So I murdered him back. I was like, no, thank you. And then it gets worse. So this second time that I did it, which was this was the Grease character instead, was I promoted him, and they were like, oh yeah, if you do this thing where you try to basically kill yourself and commit a really hard sacrifice, it'll revive him. And so I did it, and he survived, and so did my character.
Interesting.
It was just like a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot. Like, to be honest though, the game is great. If you like
fun.
anything that's Civilization like esque or Crusader Kings esque, you would like the chaos of Old World.
Okay. Sure.
You can make the maps really big. You can make them really tiny. You can make it so that I don't have this handicap because I don't really care about fighting the other nations at the moment. But you can make it so after turn 40, at least one or two of them will declare war on you, and you have to conquer everyone to win. And so, that's what I'm reading / playing / watching. But you know what I want to talk about? I want to talk about what Tony's book is.
Yeah.
And the fact that we all of us had to read and look at one of my favorite books of all time also, Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones.
Yes.
Tony, why did we choose Howl's Moving Castle?
Because it is literally one of my favorite books ever. I read it every year. I'm trying to remember what year I first read it. I can't really remember. It's not been more than 5 years, I don't think, but I've read it every year since I read it because it may have been like 7 years ago or something that I first read it, and it just took. I think the thing that I love the most about it is that it's just pure comfort. Despite how much happens, because there's a lot that happens in that book, it's. The feeling that I get every time I read it is just one of pure peace, calm, joy, charm. I mean, everything falls into place the way that it should. Or at least, I don't know if the way that it should is correct, but like the way that it feels inevitable,
Yeah, it didn't reach the levels of cuteness that I got from Kiki's delivery service.
No.
But no, I definitely concur. It's very charming. It's very, I agree.
Yeah, and I feel like the thing that I think that's the third time I read it through, I realized something about it that I had not realized before in talking about it with a friend. It's a reverse Peter Pan story.
Yes.
And I was like,
oh, yeah.
How did that? Because that part in the book, still, every time I'm like, this doesn't feel inevitable. And yet, it doesn't destroy the book. It only makes it more interesting. When they go back to Wales, I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, that just threw me completely for a loop. And actually, I would say that I tell people all the time to avoid Miyazaki until you have read this book a few times, because he goes in a completely different direction at one point, and I actually dislike the direction he goes in, despite enjoying the movie. I enjoy the movie for what it is. I just can't, other than, Miyazaki having his own creative imagination and wanting to do what he wants to do, I don't understand why he wouldn't just tell that book the way it was.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing as like with Kiki's delivery service too. He goes in a completely separate direction.
He does, but I didn't dislike his direction for Kiki's. It's just different.
I think the main thing, though, like, this is coming from somebody who watched the movie first before reading the book.
I did, too.
I would view them as, yes, they're similar and they come from the same source material and it's the same story, but I would view them as separate.
Yeah, they're very
because
separate.
If you don't view them as separate, it's like reading Harry Potter and then having a complete and utter reaction to the fact that they missed so many different plot holes in the movie after you've read the books. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, you have to let that go.
And that's kind of the power for the course for a lot of book to film adaptations. So, I mean that makes sense, but I would definitely view them as completely separate, because I had no idea this book... Story time! I had no idea this book existed till I was in college.
Oh, sure.
So in high school, I was really obsessed with the movie. Like, granted, I was just obsessed with all the Miyazaki movies. Like, that was, like, a key personality trait for me, was just, like, all of them, specifically Mononoke, Kiki's Delivery Service, Spirited Away, and Howl's Moving Castle. Those four. Not in that order. They all just get mixed up depending on which day it is.
Yeah, those were the first four I saw.
Also Nausicaa. I loved Nausicaa. But
that's good.
I haven't gotten to that one yet.
it's really good, I promise.
I've heard, yeah.
Also, Castle in the Sky is also really good.
I love Castle in the Sky.
But I had no idea this book existed, and so when I was in college, we went up to Lansing for a whole entire, like, mass thing for choir. It was, like, a thing that I've explained to Tony and Grant on multiple occasions about it, I think. But we decided to make a day of it, like, the college group, because we were just like, why would we go up there for, like, 2 hours and then not do anything and then have to come back? It's kind of boring.
Yeah.
So that night we were going to go see Phantom, because Phantom was touring and they were at MSU.
Oh, fun, yeah.
And so we were like, well, what are we going to do? Because this thing ends at 11 in the morning and the show's not till, like, 6 o'clock at night. What the heck are we going to do? So we went to the mall.
Of course.
And so we were at Okemos. And so we're at the mall in Okemos, and there's a used bookstore in the mall.
Nice.
And so I went in and I'm looking around and I have, like, a few dollars in my pocket. I feel absolutely nothing for this. I was just kind of like, fine, whatever. And I turn around and I'm just like looking through the fantasy section, and this book is legitimately just sitting there. And I sat there and I stared at it and I went, it's a book? I thought full facts. I thought it was like a novelization of the movie at first, because I had never seen this book in my entire life. I thought it was like, so Resident Evil has novelizations of the games, where it's basically like parroting the exact same story.
Or Star Wars has novelizations of the movies,
And so I thought it was a novelization of the Miyazaki movie. And then so I bought it, and then I took it home, and then I read it, and then I realized, no, this book comes first.
Yes. And in fact, fun fact, had it not been for, and this is why I do my best to not give that movie crap, had it not been for that adaptation, everything in Diana Wynne Jones's catalog would have been out of print for probably longer than it was. Because, like, for a long time, for a time before she died and then for a time after she died, her work was out of print. The bulk of it. Howl's Moving Castle, of course, had that movie adaptation, so it was, revived and reprinted and all that kind of stuff over and over again. And still to this day, it's the only one that you can find with ease. Like, if you go on Amazon and type in Howl's Moving Castle, you're going to find it for a good amount of money. If you go into any local bookstore that has new books on the shelf, not just used ones, you're going to find Howl's Moving Castle if they have any Diana Wynne Jones at all.
Yeah.
But everything else by her had to be picked up by an editor at Green Willow who had read, like, some of her books. I think the editor had read Crestomancy and a couple of others, but had not read anything else, and was just inquiring, like, what happened to this woman? And then discovered not only that she was still alive, but that most of her work was out of print, and she, like, threw a fit and called everyone that she could, including the offices of Green Willow UK, and was like, what's going on? And then everyone was just kind of like, oh, you want to reprint her? Sure, why not? And the Harry Potter craze had happened, so it was even more possible because she's the OG, and not only that, is she's so much better. We have, this is a running theme, but, like, when I say she's so much better, like, it is.
Yes.
I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about that and the similarities to dissimilarities from the Harry Potter series, because I've never read the Harry Potter books, but I've heard you guys compare it to Harry Potter.
So Howl's Moving Castle is very interesting for me in terms of magic, because it's not at all like Howl's is not like.
It is. They're two different magic systems.
Yeah, and Harry Potter and Howl's don't really have any kind of, like, it really is more the Crestomancy books that have that. They have a very similar world building exercise happening, which is basically like, what if we took, the England that we know and turned it into a place where witches and wizards lived in secret, kind of thing. Yeah, right, exactly. And so but they do it in completely different ways. Like, for one, Diana Wynne Jones's series is more of like a group of standalones that, there's one character that you see in that whole series, but he is almost never the main character. He's
kind of like that connecting character that just shows up in between.
Yeah, which is
that's how you know it's a series, is because he just shows up.
Because he's there, and he's in some varied state of living, and there's multiple worlds, and so it's very much its own thing, and Harry Potter is very much its own thing. But even down to like the way in which the sentences are structured, their use of adverbs, those kinds of things. I have a running theory that J.K. Rowling read a Chrestomanci book when she was in middle school because she would have been the perfect age for it, promptly forgot it, grew up, and then it all came back as Harry Potter. I really think that's what happened because it's uncanny that this woman
I'm gonna have to read the Chrestomanci series.
Yeah, that this woman was writing that book and publishing that book and thinking that way when this other woman would have been in middle school in England. And Diana Wynne Jones was pretty big in England in her first couple of decades of writing. So there's like Howl's Moving Castle and all her stuff before. And Howl's Moving Castle is sort of like the crest of that. And then there's a bunch of stuff that came afterwards that nobody knows about because she was already sort of losing attention. She never translated to America very well, which is really sad. But
I wonder why that is.
I think she's too British. Yeah, you can't... Like, for example, in Howl's Moving Castle, one of the things that makes it so engaging is that the entire thing is set in an England that's not really England. Like, it's its own fairyland. It's called Ingery, but like...
Yeah, there are there's like references to like King Arthur and stuff like that further, points towards that as well. So.
Yeah, it does, yeah, because she's not trying to cover that up. No. Like, she's literally in the very first sentence, in the land of Ingery, and then you're like, oh, okay, Ingery, England, like, it's kind of... but, yeah, it's really fun. So... I know Aaron thought. What did you think of the book?
I thought it was delightful.
Did you really?
I liked it, yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
oh, good.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
My favorite part was probably just all the constant bickering between Sophie and Howl.
It's great.
I think it's really interesting that I know she's not an actual elderly person, but it's not often you read a story, let alone a fantasy story, with an elderly person as the main character. So that was an interesting element. No, I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I know I love that too because there's a book called Reflections that Diana Wynne Jones wrote. It's a collection of essays, and one of them many of them go over her writing processes, but one of them talks about Howl's and what she was thinking some kid had mentioned to her the idea of a moving castle at her one of her events. And that's how the idea of the moving castle came into her head. And then Howl and Sophie came later, but Sophie came with this idea of like, I wonder what it would be like, because she was astonished at what it was like to just be old. Like, she was like, the number of things that I just can't do anymore because of my age. Really, she's like, it took me by surprise. And so she started thinking about that in terms of character of like, yeah, how would you tell kids that? Like, no kid would ever actually understand that. And so she decided, to put a child, well, Sophie's like 17, but still put as a protagonist of a children's book through that situation, which I thought was rather fun. See, The Witch of the Waste. Okay, there is my biggest complaint for the movie.
Yeah.
Because they completely messed her up.
They nuked her. It was like a whole entire thing.
Yeah.
Well, nerfed, however you want to say it. They retconned this woman.
Yeah, completely. And it was like, Miyazaki was just like, oh, no, no. Like, he thought better of it and was like, no, The Witch of the Waste is a waste of my time. And he literally just puts her there to make her a waste of time.
5 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's such a bigger part in this book than she is.
So huge.
And you're just like, are you kidding?
What's her function in the movie versus like?
So she something that should be.
Just like really in love with Howl in that one. That's it.
Yes, but not in the same way. Exactly. So in the movie and the book have the first third are identical. I mean, like, down to
a T.
Yeah, like, it's incredible how much detail they put together. But once you get past Sophie getting into the castle, making the deal with Calcifer, like, once that's done and she wakes up the next day, then it begins to veer. in large part, yeah, it starts to veer. And you have Diana Wynne Jones's, and then you have Miyazaki's going in another direction. With The Witch of the Waste, it starts off the way that it does in the book, which is she walks in and she curses Sophie, and then Sophie becomes old woman, and then she leaves. The next time you see her...
I think the next time you actually see The Witch of the Waste is in the movie, is when they're at, the leader, is it the queen?
Yeah,
they're
the
at,
queen's
like, her
palace
or whatever, and she's there, and that's
right.
it.
Yes, and she can't get, there's some kind of spell that overcomes the Witch of the Waste when she's heading towards the queen. The queen is apparently the super powerful sorceress.
Yep.
I'm trying.
It's a whole thing.
Yeah. And then so the Witch of the Waste becomes basically like sludge at one point. It's nonsensical. I don't understand it. It's supposed to be a part of Miyazaki's whole like, I hate what we're doing to this planet thing that he puts in all of his movies. But with that particular character, I was like, you'd have done better just to kill her off. Like,
it doesn't even make sense for her character either.
Honestly, if she had never showed up ever again, it would have been just fine. It would have been less of a massacre than what he actually put on the screen because, as we all know, to not spoil it, because the Witch of the Waste is a huge
part of the whole
spoiler in that book. So I don't want to spoil it for anyone who has not read it and wants to know what the differences are from a reading perspective. But, I mean, she's kind of a cornerstone of the plot. Like, without, I don't know. Yeah.
No, pretty much. Like, you would think that she would be, like, a bigger piece. But I don't know what it is. Like, Miyazaki does that with all of his films.
Because he has his own. I mean, and I
he kind of does that in Spirited Away, too.
I give him credit for his specific artistic vision, which is why, I mean, that's one of the things that I love Diana Wynne Jones for, is that she's very, very specific in what she sets out to do and won't be moved otherwise. And that's a really... I'm going to venture something that might be a little dangerous to say on air.
Like you haven't said dangerous things on air before.
That's fair. I would say, with the exception of Neil Gaiman, who never had to fight as hard because he's a guy.
Men.
And he's white and he's attractive. It's just true. I mean, let's put all the cards on the table. So I would say that Diana Wynne Jones is probably the last author who isn't a man who is able to say, this is absolutely what I want to do, and then succeed and fail. She succeeded in publishing and having a publishing career, but 10 to 15 years into that career, she was out of print. So, like, she's this complete, like, the publishers will never allow that kind of thing to happen ever again. If you fail eternally. You never come back, or if you do come back, then you're really, really lucky. If you succeed, you must succeed at the same thing over and over and over again, or maybe they'll let you try a few things before you can really fail.
They then shoehorn you into the box, and you have to stay in the box, and you can't exactly leave the box, even though you really think...
And I think there are plenty of authors who these days have learned how to pivot. Like Colson Whitehead is a great example. His early work was wholly ignored by anyone who wasn't a critic at the New York Times. But he had a little, group of obsessives reading him. But Underground Railroad comes along, and I always joke, I'm like, yeah, that's funny. Colson Whitehead had to get black in order for people to pay attention. Which is dumb, right? Because he'd written John Henry Days, he'd written The Intuitionist. Like, he'd written other things in which his characters were black, but they weren't the recognized American version of what we see when we think of a black man. So he never got the hype, the claim. But then he writes this book about slavery and adds, an actual train to the Underground Railroad, right? And it's this train to the future, whatever. It's a science fictional idea, but none of that is really why he became popular. It's because he wrote a slave story that he became popular. And I get so, and same is true of N.K. Jemisin. She was doing her own thing and was on the verge of, she was only 5 books in, and still on the verge of, just becoming someone that's, a smaller, lesser, not really known name, even though she deserves way more than that.
And then she wrote a slave story.
And then she literally wrote a slavery trilogy. Sure, it's science fiction.
It's like the guy who wrote, what is the book that he wrote? what was it, James? It was that retelling from...
Percival Everett.
Yeah, so he turned around and... So I read an interview with him. I think it was a Publishers Weekly interview where they were talking to him. And the one thing he said, the one thing he would never ever write, and I'm just waiting for it to, the shoe to drop. He said he would never ever write a slave story. And he hasn't so far until. And he said that that if he ever wrote a slave story, he was literally just going to title it as Paul Everett finally wrote a slave story. That's just going to be the title.
That's very Paul Everett.
Granted,
I don't think I've heard of Paul Everett. Is
Percival Everett.
Oh, sorry. Percival Everett.
Sorry,
yes.
My brain just... I don't know how to word...
I thought that's who you were talking about.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, you're...
I think the other author who kind of does it, but she doesn't exactly shoehorn herself into that box, Silva Moreno Garcia.
Yeah, right, exactly.
She does not put herself in that box.
That's true.
Though,
that's
granted,
true.
her entire, philosophy from what I remember / have read online is, one, she hates sequels. So she will never write a sequel to any of her books ever. She only writes standalones. Which, I love.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Right, exactly.
Oh my god, no.
Finally.
Thank you. But two, she doesn't shoehorn herself into specific genres.
No.
And she never really likes to write the same combination of genres twice.
Yeah,
and that's something that, I've noticed, so we have, the Daughter of Dr. Moreau, or whatever it is, which is, historical fiction. Yeah, there's some supernatural elements in there. We have Silver Nitrate, which is, thriller with supernatural... there are supernatural elements in, almost all of her work.
Yeah, but
that's
they're not, connected.
They're not connected.
Yeah.
None of the books are connected, and she doesn't stick to the same genre.
I feel like she's doing what Stephen King didn't get to do until he was already Stephen King. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, even his editor of the second of Salem's Lot was like, okay, but you realize now you've written 2 horror novels in a row, so they're going to tell you you're a horror novelist. And he's like, oh, it's fine. And he thought he thought the editor was maybe being over-exaggerated. No, all of his Bachman books tanked. Everything that he tried to do that wasn't horror in the early days tanked. So he was just like, okay, I'll write horror. And he did. And then Dark Tower comes along. And then, other he had his whole suspense era where, most people don't enjoy reading them. But still, that's a part of his whole career, is that he's had to change and alter and veer because... he always wanted to anyway, but you get shoehorned and stuck into it.
I think the thing is with her, too, and this is just what I will say from looking at maybe, her list of books.
We're back to Diane.
No. No, we're not. She, from what I can see, is, how, you come up with a book, almost, every year, or, every 2 years or something like that. Looking at her, I want to say discography, but that's not the right word for it.
Bibliography.
Thank you. None of her books are the same.
No,
she does not do the same genre.
No.
She does do the same genre twice, but she never does the same genre twice in a row.
No, that's true.
So she has, quite literally science fiction, there's fantasy, there's romance, historical fiction, there's, all these different types of things, but she never writes the same book 2 times in a row.
Right.
Which I think is kind of the success of that.
It's hard.
Which is why I think it's successful that she never has written herself into a box.
Yeah, it's hard to do. And I think that, one of the things that I appreciate so much about where Howl's Moving Castle sits in Diana Wynne Jones's particular bibliography is that even though on its own it doesn't read like a turning point, and it certainly isn't a turning point in fantasy. Before that, she had been focusing on pushing particularly juvenile fantasy into a place where it was more serious than it had ever been before. And to be known for that, because there have been plenty of people writing kids' fantasy books for decades, but she took the same position that C.S. Lewis took when he was criticizing, all of the writers of his day for writing just sappy, stupid adventure stories. He was like, oh God, if I have to read another Bastable Boys book, I'm going to throw myself into a canyon, you know what I mean? He hated that because he was like, kids are not stupid, and yet you're treating them like they're stupid. Whatever you might say about the Narnia books, the one thing that you can't, they do not pander. They refuse to pander because they're really smart, and they expect you to be smart with them. But with Howl's Moving Castle, it's like sort of her first attempt to just do a basic, simple, Diana Wynne Jones sits down and tells a story that's off the top of her head kind of thing, which is how she wrote anyway. She never, like, plotted anything out because she was like, I have no idea how to plot. Which, honestly, if you read Howl's, you're like, yeah, you kind of don't have any. Because, like, you're like, okay, cool. Whales? Cool. And, like, and then you can feel from Whales all the way to the rest of the book, her just, like, going, oh, crap, I put whales in this book. I like whales in this book. It explains a lot of things that I've been trying to tell myself about this book. But how do I make whales fit? And then you feel her, like, trying to make whales fit throughout the rest of the book. And she does. And it's great. She uses a John Donne poem to do it, which is cheating. But, fine. If you can. She went to Oxford.
She can do what she wants at this point.
Right, exactly.
She's good.
Yeah. But it's that kind of, like, tenacity, I think, to have that. It's almost like she shaped her mind to be able to write Howl's Moving Castle. So I think it's fascinating that that's the one that survives the most and is constantly being reprinted and reformatted and like I bought the Folio Literary Edition a few years ago when it first came out because it's the Folio Literary Edition and it's beautiful and, like, I had to have it. But I don't know. I just find that so striking about Howl's is just where it sits in her own career as a fantasy novelist, but it doesn't do anything for fantasy, if that makes sense.
No, it does not.
Other than, in my view, it is one of the earliest examples of cozy fantasy, although it's not called that we have. Even though cozy fantasy I still think is at this point such a buzzy term.
It's like romantasy is a buzzy term.
But see, romantasy has a stronger tradition than cozy fantasy does. Cozy fantasy still needs to hook, because, like, romantasy knows that it comes from paranormal romance and supernatural romance, right? Like, it knows that about itself, whereas cozy fantasy, people still have this idea that, like, cozy fantasy started with Legends and Lattes, and it's like, no, that's just when you started calling it that. And also, Legends and Lattes wishes that it was Howl's Moving Castle. It wishes with every fiber of its being, because, oh god, is that a terrible book. It's not, it's just boring. It's boring. It's so dull. Like, it's like, oh, yay. The orc warrior lady pulled her sword off the mantle. Oops, here comes the racketeering dwarf who's the president of the town. He's going to make sure she never puts her restaurant up again. Like, it's so... Like, it's just...
There are some strong words, and I feel like that's a whole other episode.
It's true.
I feel like you should make me read it for another episode, and then we can come back and discuss it.
I don't want to read it again.
Well, you don't have to, but we have to.
Favorite characters?
Casper.
Yeah, Casper's good.
Casper.
What are your guys' opinions on Michael?
I find Michael in the book, I find him so endearing.
He's charming in the book. He's adorable.
Wonderfully endearing. And I feel like without Michael, there's the charm goes missing. In certain parts of the book. Michael's carrying all the charm when everyone else is literally like... Because Michael's not as powerful as the rest of them, which is made a point of it later in the book, especially when Howl starts noticing what Sophie does, is what Sophie's magic is. He's just like, wait a minute. Do you realize that everything you talk to comes to life? And she's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, you've never noticed that. Okay, you need to pay attention to your own magic. And she's just like, I'm not a witch, but okay, thanks, fam.
Peace out.
Whereas Michael is one of the few characters in the book who knows himself.
Yes.
From the very beginning. He needs no change. He's the least dynamic character in the book because he doesn't need to be.
Kind of a grounding force.
I think the sad part is like in the movie he's not as big of a character.
Because again, Miyazaki. So like I mean in the book Michael is such a nice and charming, cute little character, but like once you finally get, and it's kind of the same thing with Calcifer too.
Like, where, like, there's so much more that they do, but, like, when you get to the Miyazaki version, Miyazaki focuses more so on Sophie, Howl, Witch of the Waste, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't focus as much, well, Sophie and Howl, but you get the idea. He doesn't focus as much on Calcifer and, you know.
Yeah, you know, the one thing, I feel like Miyazaki shot himself in the foot because one of my favorite scenes in the entire book, because it's so cinematic, and I'm like, oh gosh, I wish I could have seen this happen, is when the Witch of the Waste and Howl are fighting above the clouds.
Yes.
In that village, that seaside village. Oh my gosh. And like, but also cinematically, what would have been fun and a little chaotic is Michael and Sophie with those 7-league boots. He could not figure out how to make those 7-league boots work to save their lives, which is fun. I mean, I feel like you need Michael and Calcifer very much in the beginning. But what I love about the book is that the author finds a need for them throughout the rest of the book.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Without breaking formula or breaking rank or like, you know, she just will set up a whole scene and make sure that every character has a specific role that fits within their character for that scene as you go along. And the episodic nature of the book really helps.
Yes.
So I really, really appreciated that. Would you say that Michael is your favorite character?
No. I'd probably go with Sophie.
Sophie? Yeah. You know, I guess I will be basic and just say that Howl is my favorite character.
Howl is great also.
Yeah, he is. I will say the first few times that I read it, Sophie was my favorite character because she's fantastic. But in later readings, Howl has become my favorite because it takes a very specific kind of man to love Sophie.
Yes.
Which I think is great. I mean, Sophie's in underdevelopment, and I think that can be a hard kind of person to love, someone who's still finding their way. But it makes sense that Howl would be the one to love her, right? Because he's also, like, in a completely different kind of way, he's trying to find his way. Which I guess is what makes the book so endearing, right? Because all of these characters are trying to, seek their fortune, right? It's sort of stated in the very beginning. And they all get there. That's the other thing that I really love about this book, is that it does the Jane Austen, where everyone gets married at the end. I mean, not really, but really. Everyone gets their happy ending. And that is so lost in books right now. Completely. Like, we just don't have it. Well, unless the book is bad.
I mean, listen.
Yeah.
I'll just quote my favorite part at the very end, is Calcifer just going. Because they're all like, he's back! And then Calcifer just goes, you know, I don't mind as long as I can come and go, though. Besides, it's raining outside, so I can't leave.
That's so Calcifer. I do love Calcifer. Very much.
You know, next episode we're pivoting.
Yeah.
We're talking about letters.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
And then we're